Free agency is starting to look like a nightmare for the Tennessee Titans. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We got a lot to discuss on today's show. Free agency is starting to look like a nightmare at certain positions for the Tennessee Titans. I'll explain why. Also, we're going to continue our Locked On Titans 2024 free agency preview, looking at the tight end position. And there's going to be a ton of rumor nonsense for the Titans here in the coming days. I'm going to give an impromptu Roland's rant on that. Before we dive into all of that, I do want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. But with that being said, free agency is starting to look like a nightmare for the Titans, especially at wide receiver and at cornerback, because the reality is the top options at each of those positions are simply not going to be available. And this is a reality that, at least for me, I've acknowledged for probably a month now. The realistic outcome here is that none of the top four wide receivers are available, that none of the top two wide receivers are available. And let's be honest here, that is a nightmare for the Tennessee Titans, because what happens is if the top guys that you actually want to spend money on aren't available, then all that leaves you with is the B-tier options. And the problem is, if all the top options on the market aren't available, then that means the B-tier options are going to have a stronger market, which means they're going to cost more money, where you could get a Gabe Davis for $12 million a year. If he's the best wide receiver on the market, you might be paying $16 million a year. Hollywood Brown, $12 million. You might be paying $15 million per year now, because teams are going to need wide receiver help. And if the top options aren't available, then there's going to be more competition for the B guys. And again, that's going to inflate their market. So that's why we've had conversations about wide receiver. And you look, T. Higgins, franchise tagged, not hitting the free agency market. Michael Pittman, Chris Ballard, the GM of the Indianapolis Colts, came out and said Michael Pittman will be on the Colts in September. Whether they get a long-term deal done or they franchise tag and keep him, Michael Pittman is not hitting the free agency market. All right. Mike Evans, all indications are, and of course these could be wrong, but all indications are that Mike Evans is getting ready to get a long-term deal from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which leaves us with Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is the only top-flight wide receiver that has the potential, the possibility that he might actually hit free agency and be available. And look, I've said I would love to have Calvin Ridley. I would sign Calvin Ridley in a second if he was available. Yes, he's 29 years old. That's on the older side, but he missed a year and a half of football. So his body is not 29 years old. His body is 27 and a half years old in terms of the tread that's on the tires from being in the NFL. So I think Calvin Ridley's body and performance is going to be younger than his age because of that time missed. Also, you're stealing him away from Jacksonville while they still have to give up a draft pick because they traded for him no matter what. So if Calvin Ridley were to leave in free agency, the Jags still have to give a third-round pick to the Falcons for the trade. Love that. Steal Calvin Ridley from the Jaguars. They have to give up draft capital still, even though he left. You sign him to help Will Levis. And here's the thing with Calvin Ridley, great route runner. Just great route runner, expert route runner, one of the better route runners in the NFL. I think that he was a little rusty last year. Again, missed out of football for a year and a half. comes back, trying to do his best. I know that it wasn't a fantastic year, but still, what are we talking about here? Calvin Ridley still had an excellent season last year. So for me, I would absolutely go after Calvin Ridley. But let's all be honest with ourselves again. Calvin Ridley's probably not going to be available. Jacksonville's probably not going to let him go. And then you go to cornerback. Jalen Johnson set to get a long-term deal from the Chicago Bears. That should be coming down the pike any day. And L'Jarius Sneed got franchise tag. Now, the Chiefs are letting L'Jarius Sneed look for a trade, but as I said, with T. Higgins, as I said, with Justin Jefferson, the Tennessee Titans are not in a position to trade for one of these high-priced free agents. They can't give up valuable draft capital and give out a big-time contract. That is not where this team is at, okay? They are not in a position to make those kind of moves. They aren't one player away from being a Super Bowl contender. They need to build out this whole thing. So basically what I'm saying is the two positions outside of offensive line where the Titans could stand to spend money, there isn't really going to be a lot of people worth spending money on that are actual difference makers that will get you hyped up for what's to come for the Titans. They're going to be either overpaid B-tier guys or they're going to be less than exciting depth signing, which the Titans need depth signings. We're getting ready to talk about free agency at tight end. The Titans don't need to break the bank at tight end by any means, but is that going to get you hype? Is that going to get you excited for the season? Probably not. Probably not. So the best names at the positions the Titans need the most probably never hit in the market. So you need to recalibrate your expectations because what the Titans can't do is the Titans can't go out and spend money just to spend it. Hey, we got $80 million in cap. We need to spend 70 of it, no matter who it is. If we got to overpay Hollywood, if we got to overpay Gabe Davis, if we got to overpay Kendall Fulton. No, that's not what you do. You don't spend the money just because you have it, all right? There's a kid who I grew up with, would get any kind of money. I won't say how he got the money, but he'd get any kind of money, and the next day he'd have a brand new pair of Jordans. He'd have a brand new shirt, new designer jeans with holes in them, brand new flat bill hat, and he'd be asking you for $1 to buy a McDouble. Don't be that. You can't be that. You know what I mean? So the Titans want to spend money. We all want them to spend money, but if there aren't players out there worth spending money on, then the Titans simply cannot just spend to spend. So prepare yourselves and calibrate your expectations for the Titans not going out there and dropping buku bucks. One thing that you will need to know, rollover cap is a thing in the NFL. If you did not know, think about rollover minutes for your cell phone back when that was the thing. All right. If the Titans don't spend all their money, they can roll that cap space over to next year, which would be very, very helpful. Like the Titans had $9 million in rollover cap. J-Rob had like $30 million 1 year early in his tenure. So that does happen. So I'm just saying, I want the Titans to add players. I want the Titans to make a splash. I want the Titans to do all those things. But if there aren't players available who it makes sense to do that on, you don't do it just to do it. Okay, so I know that some of you guys are going to be absolutely livid if the Titans don't go out and spend $60 million. Recalibrate your expectations right now, because the odds are, based on the current news and the way things are going, that none of these top tier options that we would want to spend money on are going to be available. So recalibrate, set your expectations in the right place, and you'll never be disappointed. But with that being said, we do got to talk more free agency here. It's time to continue the 2024 Locked On Titans free agency preview and dive into the tight end position, where the Titans don't really need a ton of help, in my opinion. We're going to dive into that. Before we do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet money lines, spreads, over-unders, player props. I love a same-game parlay where you put a bunch of little bets together for a big payout if you hit. Speaking of NBA, did you guys see the Los Angeles Lakers come back on Wednesday night on the Clippers? What a game. You could have got some great value on the Lakers money line when they were down by 19 heading into the fourth quarter. So make sure that you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about free agency, the way things are going, and how we need to recalibrate our expectations here. But now, again, I want to continue the 2024 Locked On Titans free agency preview. We're going to talk about tight ends. Now, we talked about backup quarterbacks. We talked about backup running backs already. If you missed those episodes, go back and check those out. But now, getting into tight ends, before we do, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But I'm going to continue with the hype, happy, and hate tiers for our free agency preview. And for me, it's going to be a little weird for you guys to hear what I'm about to lay down. But here's my thing. Let me start here with kind of an analysis of where I see the Titans tight end position. Chig is tight end 1. Josh Whyle can be a very good backup tight end in receiving situations. Hopefully his strength improves this year. Help from a better coaching staff, especially Bill Callahan on the offensive line, working with the tight ends. Also, you have tight end coach Justin Otten, who came over from being the running back coach before, really good in the run game, really understands blocking schemes. Those two coaches together could get better out of Josh Whyle and Chig in blocking. But at the end of the day, the Titans don't need to go out and spend big on tight end, whether it be in the draft, whether it be in free agency. The Titans do not need to divert high-tier capital to tight end. They don't need to go out and spend big money at tight end in free agency. There's no need to do that. They don't need to spend one of their top 3 draft picks in the first 4 rounds on tight end. They simply don't need to do that. And let me just say this. A lot of you guys listening, and a lot of people in my comments and a lot of people online love Jonnu Smith. They love Jonnu Smith. All right, Jonnu Smith was so great. Miss Jonnu, blah, blah, blah. And then at the same time, those same people will say, oh, Chig was a disappointment last year. Chig failed to meet expectations. Chig isn't tight end 1. We can't trust him. But they love Jonnu. Chig in his second year as a 5th-round pick, outproduced any season Jonnu Smith ever had with the Titans. Now, look, in 2020, Jonnu Smith had 8 touchdowns. So if you want to give him all the credit for those 8 touchdowns and say that was a better season, then fine. But last year, Chig had 54 catches for 528 yards. 54 catches for 528 yards in his second year as a 5th-round pick. Jonnu Smith, as a 3rd-round pick, his best season in catches and yards with the Titans was 41 catches for 448 yards. So how can you at one point say, oh, Jonnu Smith, I miss Jonnu Smith, he was so great, and then also call Chig a disappointment? Like, Chig as a lower draft pick in his second year has already outproduced Jonnu Smith in his 4th year as a 3rd-round pick. It just doesn't make any sense that people hate on Chig but love Jonnu. It doesn't line up. So with that being said, my whole point here is Jonnu Smith is tight end 1. And you look at Brian Callahan's offenses and the teams that Brian Callahan has been involved with over the last 9 years, rarely is there a top-flight tight end. It's just not what his offense is focused on, okay? And that, again, goes to my point why I don't want Brock Bowers. But we'll talk about Brock Bowers at the end of the show. All right, so going into free agency for the Titans need a tight end 3 or a tight end 2 who can split time as tight end 2 with Josh Whyle. Maybe you want a tight end 2A, tight end 2B, whatever you want to call it. The Titans need a 3rd tight end. They don't need a top tight end, okay? They need a role player who can block. Josh Whyle, matchup guy, should get better at blocking, but at the end of the day, he's going to help you catching passes. We've seen Chig get the ball in his hands, all right? So the Titans need balance at the tight end position, and that's someone who is a big-bodied, physical guy who can block. And that is why my hype tier for tight end includes 2 people. And they're not anywhere near the top names at the position that are available in free agency. But 2 people. Number 1, Adam Trautman, former Dayton Flyer. Shout out to DYT 937, baby. So Adam Trautman is one of the better inline blockers in the NFL. He's got a little athleticism, and he is a big-bodied guy. Josh Wiley is tall, but he's skinny. Chigakonkwo is just small overall for a tight end. Trautman is big, physical, can be an inline blocker, and he's going to give you a lot more in the passing game than somebody like Jeff Swaim or Trevin Wesco. You know what I mean? So he gives you some of those qualities of being an inline blocker who can put his hand in the dirt and be next to the tight end, but he isn't also a complete minus in the passing game. So I love Adam Trautman as an option for the Titans. I think he would make a ton of sense. Also, Drew Sample. Sample is another blocking tight end coming over from Cincinnati. Obviously, there's going to be familiarity there with Brian Callahan and his system. So I think Drew Sample is really a name to watch. Could be that third tight end for the Titans and ultimately be tight end 2A. You know what I mean? The Titans come out on early downs. They got 3 wide receivers in Drew Sample. You get the second down, third down, you start to work in Josh Wiley, Chigakonkwo. Use them more. They'll get more snaps, but situationally, you could use a guy like Drew Sample. So I think Adam Trautman and Drew Sample are the only guys in my hype tier. Again, the Titans do not need to go out and spend a bunch of money on a tight end. They need a specific type of tight end, and I think Trautman and Sample both fit. Now, as for happy, I won't be hype because I think it's an overpay, but I would be happy because I do like these tight ends. Gerald Everett, who I was standing for a few years ago in free agency, and Noah Fant. Now, I think those guys are too expensive for what the Titans are going to want to do. You could get Trautman Sample for $2 to $3 million. You know what I mean? But bare minimum, I think Everett or Fant could be looking like $5 or $6 million. So I wouldn't want to pay that much, which is why they're not my hype tier. But I just think that Noah Fant and Gerald Everett are good, serviceable players. Like, they're just good NFL players. They're not great. They're not elite. They're not all pros. But one thing that bothers me about the casual fan mindset is if a guy isn't a Pro Bowl, all-pro level player, then he sucks. And that's just not the case. Like, it's just not the case. There are players out there who are never going to be all-pro or Pro Bowl or whatever, but they're just good NFL players. And I think that Noah Fant and Gerald Everett are both that, and they could be helpful within an offense. Finally, my hate tier is any of the high-end tight ends that are going to get paid the most money. Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith doesn't make any sense for the Titans. He's not anything what I just described the Titans need. He's not big-bodied. He's not a great blocker. He's a move tight end. The Titans have Chigakonkwo. Chigakonkwo is a more productive version of Jonnu Smith. So why would I go out and pay $5-6 million for Jonnu Smith? We have Jonnu Smith at home. All right? So to me, any of these tight ends that are going to be at the top of the position in money, I'm not interested in all. That's not where the Titans are at. That's not what the Titans need. Chigakonkwo, tight end 1. Josh Wiley is a primary backup. Get a big-bodied, physical, inline blocker as your third tight end, and let's ride for cheap. All right, that's what the Titans need to do there. But with that being said, we do got to get into some nonsense that we got to prepare ourselves for over the weekend. So I'm going to dive into that. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you would do if you had an extra hour in the day? Go for a run, take a nap, read a book. A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. And the question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. I've enjoyed my time working with BetterHelp. Incredibly convenient, easy to use, switch a therapist. It's really nice. It helped me ground myself. And again, find out what's most important to me. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Again, it's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Learn what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the free agency nightmare that the Titans might be facing. We talked about the tight ends in free agency in part 3 of my Locked On Titans free agency preview. Now I just want to end the week with a Rollins rant for you guys on all of the nonsense and the rumors that are about to come your way. Okay. Before I get into that, though, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. I do want to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. It's rumor season, folks. We're here, and I'm already seeing rumors. Hey, the Titans are interested in this guy, and people are tagging me, and all these rumor accounts is ML Football and JPA and Pro Foot, NFL Rums, and guys, all of these Twitter accounts and these online accounts giving you these rumors, and it's nonsense. It's just nonsense, okay? Like, at the end of the day, if you don't see the source's name, like this person is reporting this, and it's just rumor per sources, and it's not somebody that you trust, and it's not somebody that you're aware of, just don't fall for it. You know, like the big rumor that came out on Thursday before I recorded this, the Titans are interested in Mekhi Becton. Why would they be? The dude has dealt with a ton of injuries. He's had a ton of work ethic concerns. He's showed his butt online. Not literally, you guys, I'm using the term, but he's just, it doesn't make any sense. Not only that, but he's a guy who struggled with his weight. He is a huge, monstrous guy. But how does that fit in the Titans zone blocking scheme, where you have to be athletic and you have to be nimble and you have to move on your feet all the time? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The Titans are looking to get away from people who are injury prone, who have shown that they get injured all the time. That is Mekhi Becton. He is the poster child for, he's hurt all the time. He's overweight. He's not in shape. He doesn't take care of himself. He's everything wrong with the athlete mindset. Everybody listening to this probably at some point wanted to be a professional athlete before you got older and realized, I'm not athletic enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not going to make it. And a lot of us, including me, I'm not going to act like I don't. I look at people like Mekhi Becton with incredible disdain. You have a monstrous frame. You're 6'8", 300 pounds. You have all the athletic tools in the world. You have all the resources in the world to be the best athlete that you can. And it's your own work ethic and your own mentality that has led you to be a failure. Now, making it to the NFL, blah, 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 having a contract, calling that a failure, that's probably not fair on my end, all right? Probably not. But let's say this way. The reason you didn't hit your potential with all of those gifts that you were given, not because you worked for it, but because you just were born and your genetics led you to be a mountain of a man. I have a cousin who's like 6'4", 200 some pounds. If I could have been, I'm 5'5". If I could have been that size, I'm probably getting some free college. May not be D1 or FBS or whatever, but I'd be going to a D3 school for free. But a lot of these guys just skate on talent their whole lives. And then when everyone is talented, like they are in the NFL, now you can't hack it. This is a story as old as time. People skating on talent without the work ethic. That is Mekhi Becton. Uber talented, all of the physical gifts you could ever want, zero of the work ethic. Why would the Titans go after a guy like that? And again, a big-bodied, heavy-footed, overweight guy like that, why would you want that guy in a zone blocking system that relies on athleticism from your offensive lineman? So we're giving a guy who's always injured, who doesn't work hard, who doesn't fit the scheme, we're giving him the opportunity? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So just be on the lookout. It's rumor season. One other thing I want to say before I go. Every prospect is meeting with almost every team in Indianapolis at the Combine. So, they met with the Titans. Well, yeah, they probably met with 25 teams in the NFL. They're at the Combine doing meetings with teams. So just don't let yourself get fooled here by these rumors, by this nonsense, and by these, they met with this. That doesn't mean anything. There are guys that the Titans have drafted that they didn't meet with. There are guys that the Titans met with that they didn't draft. So I'm not saying that everything that you read is fake. I'm just saying be smart enough to take it with a grain of salt because it is rumor season. It is nonsense season. And some of these rumors and stuff don't even make any sense. So just keep all that in mind, especially this weekend with the Combine and the drills and the talk and the conversation. Keep all of it in mind. But we're going to sort through all of it on Monday when I get back, or Sunday night for the YouTube crowd. Shout out to you guys. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this week in this episode of Locked On Titans. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.